Carrasco, and thank you for
The
reading.
Manny Pacquiao, the gold, I don't think there'll be a problem for Manny.
Has its share of great fights. But every once in a while, human mind can also be controlled and nothing. Again, happy nothing.
Ako po si Associated Filipino PM, only here on Para sa Bayan.
That's the opening bell for Round by Round presented by Eastern Communications. Mabuhay Pilipinas, welcome world. I'm Nisi Casiano.
And I'm Ryan Sangalia.
Over the weekend, Magic Mike Plania was successful in his fight against Ricardo Nunes, stopping the Panamanian fighter in the very first round. Ryan, was there anything that hardly surprised you in that fight? Though Nunes was once a world title challenger and a seasoned veteran, the guy has been on a losing streak since 2018 and was sitting on the sidelines for 2 years.
Mm-hmm. Yes, no, I'm not at all surprised at the outcome. I was surprised that Plania was able to get it done that quickly because Plania generally is not known as a fast starter. You know, he is someone who kind of builds tempo. But this was the sort of win that he needed in that spot. He needed to go out there, get this guy out of there, try to make a statement to show that he's ready for, you know, the top guys at 122 pounds. You know, he was rumored to be fighting on that big junior featherweight card that is happening next week. That fight didn't come through. So now it's a matter of trying to find trying to get him where he fits in. You know, that's the kind of knockout win that someone who's looking to put on a TV card will see Plania and say, okay, he could play on our team. So I think Plania did what he was supposed to do, and with that kind of guy, you don't linger around for a majority decision or you know, winning on points later on. You go for the knockout as soon as possible.
Ryan, still the biggest win in the career of Mike Plania was the majority decision victory over Joshua Greer Jr. last year. But come to think of it, Sandman Promotions fell short to ride on that momentum to some extent. Instead, they ended up taking activity fights against Emmanuel Mogawa last April here in the Philippines, and then Nunes over the weekend. But let me ask, do you feel that this is the right route to take for a blue chip prospect like Mike Plania for now?
I think that they will have to eventually get the attention of a bigger co-promoter. So that's sort of the issue, I think, for Plania at the moment, is just getting him a spot. Like, you know, Sandman, they built him up from the ground up. Now it's time to get him involved with a PBC, maybe a co-promotion deal with a Top Rank. That might be great. It really depends on where the fights are. You know, like the biggest fight right now at 122 pounds would be against MJ Akhmadaliev, you know, who holds the IBF and the WBA titles at 122 pounds. He fights with Matchroom. You know, if they could make a deal with Matchroom to get that fight, I'd say take it. And then, you know, there's Stephen Fulton, you know, who has the WBO belt. He's on PBC. Brandon Figueroa as well. Those are fights that can be made under the right circumstances, I think. And Mike Plania certainly has a case to be there as a live contender. But you're right. It does feel like they squandered some pretty big momentum. He had a few things working. I remember there was some talk of him fighting on that Fulton card. He wound up not for some reason. I think he may have gotten sick at some point. So yeah, that would have been a big opportunity for him, but unfortunately for him, it didn't come through.
Plania is number 4 in the WBO, number 9 in the IBF, if I'm not mistaken, number 15 in the WBC, and number 5 in the WBA. Do you think his position in those 4 rankings explains why JC Manangkel is taking this kind of slow burn approach with Mike Plania?
I think it's more of an issue of just the opportunities not being there for him right now. You know, he is a top contender. You know, He's fought, he's had some pretty good wins. You mentioned the Greer fight, the Gutierrez fight right before that in Miami was a pretty big one. His lone defeat was to Juan Carlos Payano in a fight that he dropped. Payano was winning that fight, but then Payano knew how to win a decision, even when he was outgunned. So that was more of an experience issue. So Plania has shown that he is ready that he can hang with more experienced fighters, that he's ready for that championship level. He just needs the opportunity.
As I mentioned a while ago, Plania is ranked number 9 in the IBF. There's another Filipino in the same rankings in the name of Carl James Martin. Is there a possibility that Plania and Martin could cross paths? And do you think it's a fight that would make sense for both men?
I don't think it would make sense. I don't think that either man has anything that the other guy wants. I think at this point, Plania is ready to fight for a title, whereas Martin is more, he's still a prospect. He's pretty much untested. I think that would be too big of a leap for Martin at this point, because you got to remember, Plania was one of the most experienced Filipino amateurs. He fought internationally with I believe the AIBA World Championships, youth championships. He's an experienced guy. I think that might be too big of a leap for Martin at this point, and I don't think it would make sense just in terms of who's the audience there. It's not like you have like Donaire and Casimiro. That's a big fight because both guys have something. They've already established themselves. I think Martin needs to step up, and that would be something that would take a little while to get established.
Ryan, you mentioned that it's a high time for Mike Plania to have this step up competition. But as part of the lead up to vying for the title, who do you want to see him fight next?
I'd like to see him just get in there. I think that he's in a position right now where he could fight, for a title tomorrow. He's that kind of fighter. I think a good measuring stick would be like someone who's like durable, has been to the championship level before. Someone like Ryosuke Awasa would be good. Even Ronnie Rios, who was supposed to fight Akhmadaliev this past week, but he had to pull out because of COVID. Ronnie Rios, that would be a good test for him. I think even someone like a recent title challenger like Angelo Leo, I think that would be a good fight if we're talking below the title level. But I think you could put him in there with Figueroa, Fulton, even a Daniel Roman, who doesn't have a title belt, but he was a champion. He could fight Akhmadaliev. I think you could put him in with anyone. I think, right now, pull the trigger, make something happen. If you get a call, take that fight. Plania is ready for the championship level.
It's time for our fearless forecast of the day, brought to you by Eastern Communications. On the undercard of the Teofimo Lopez versus George Cambosos fight this November 27, Azinga Fuzile, a South African prospect who holds a 15-1 record with 9 knockouts, faces Kenichi Ogawa from Japan for the vacant IBF Super Featherweight Championship. Ryan, what's your fearless forecast on this championship fight?
I'm going to go with Fuzile by the decision. I will be at ringside at that fight this weekend. Fuzile, I think, as a southpaw, has a good boxing ability. I think he will be able to control Ogawa, from distance. Ogawa, we've seen him before, Filipino fans. He has the technical draw with Joe Noinai. I thought Noinai was winning that fight. Unfortunately, that fight came to a premature ending. There was no winner in that fight, but I like his Fuzile. The only time I'd seen him before was he was fighting Shavkatson Rakimov, and there was some controversy in that fight when he lost. The Fuzile camp had accused Rakimov of using banned smelling salts in between rounds. So, I think there is something to say there about controversy. So, I think Fazile just has a stylistic edge here, and I'm going to go with him by decision.
Ryan, what can you say about the prospect or the possibility that, a title unification, whoever wins in this fight would go on to face Oscar Valdez?
I think that would be a lot more manageable of a leap for Valdez than, say, Shakur Stevenson. But Valdez at the moment, he's going through some promotional issues where he's trying to figure out where he's going to go next. I think that a fight with, say, an Emmanuel Navarrete would be a bigger opportunity. But it never hurts to have another belt, and I think you'd have to favor Valdez against either of these guys.
So Ryan picks Fuzile to prevail over Ogawa via decision. Now is the time for reliable connections. Eastern Communications Fiber One is ideal for powering small, medium enterprises that are on their way to digitizing their business and pushing forward to a strong and fearless tomorrow. Do contact 5300-7000 or visit their website eastern.com.ph for more information about the service. And that's our Eastern Communications Fearless Forecast of the day. Following his 10th round TKO of Sean Porter last weekend, Terence Crawford announced that he is parting ways with Top Rank Promotions in the most savage way possible. Crawford made sure everyone knew that he's saying goodbye, including Bob Arum, who was beside Crawford when the undefeated boxer said that he is moving on. Ryan, the post-fight interviews were as interesting as the fight itself. Kenny Porter, the father and trainer of Sean Porter, was the first one who stole the spotlight by throwing his son under the bus with his comments. And then Crawford had his moment during the press conference while sitting next to Arum. Of course, the focus of this discussion is on Terence Crawford. Let's dissect what led to that shocking scenario. Was that a byproduct of the frustration that Crawford had all this time with Top Rank?
I mean, this was the shot that you could see miles away coming because, that frustration had been building and everyone knew that Crawford's contract was coming up and Crawford had not been happy about not being able to get the big fights, right? So now that, Crawford said he was leaving without saying he was leaving. He was like, well, I'm moving on and my mind's already made up and Bob couldn't get me, the Spence fight. And Bob was just sitting right there, just like, oh, I'd rather be anywhere right now, but here. But, I think the frustration comes from just not getting those fights at 147 pounds. And that's, the issue is that Top Rank, they don't have the big 147 pounders under contract, at the lower weights. Yeah, that meant those bigger fights were able to be made. That wasn't the case here. And Crawford is one of the best fighters of this generation. But at the weight, at his most glamorous weight class, 147 pounds, he's only been able to pass the eye test. His resume doesn't really hold up. Manny Pacquiao was in a similar situation where, Pacquiao was with Top Rank and was able to run through their biggest names at lighter weights. And then when it got to 147 pounds, they had to branch out and fight fighters from other promotions. But when he did fight interpromotional fights, we're talking about like fights against like Miguel Cotto and things like that. Those big fights ran out soon. And then Pacquiao was stuck fighting, lesser known fighters from that stable, like, Joshua Clottey, for instance. I think that when Crawford's issue is that, he didn't have anyone to fight at Top Rank. He was fighting Jeff Horn. I think Jeff Horn was his biggest, highest profile fight at 147 pounds before fighting Porter.
Yeah. Ryan Topraks still found a way to put together a marquee fight for Crawford last weekend. Isn't that enough to convince Crawford to stay with Top Rank, or do you feel it's a little bit too late?
That was a mandatory fight. That was a fight that was pushed on them by the WBO. And Porter wanted that fight. Crawford wanted that fight, and that fight was made. If there's a way to get out of a fight, even if a sanctioned body, because sanctioned bodies, they order fights all the time that don't happen, because just the business doesn't cooperate. And you know what I mean? That's, guys lose their spots. They claim an injury to get out of fights against champions that they don't want to fight, So that was pushed on them. That was, Top Rank had been able to deliver other fights from PBC with Crawford. Usually they were lesser guys, like Jose Benavides was a PBC fighter who wound up crossing over to fight Crawford. So, but the issue is, did he get fights with Keith Thurman? Did he get a fight with? Bob Arum also had Pacquiao at the time. Couldn't get Pacquiao in the ring with him. He wanted it, but it never happened. But Spence, Ugas, those guys are on the other side. And if he wants to, it's like Kevin Nash said when he went to WCW, like, this is where the big boys play, huh? Terence Crawford ain't here to play.
Ryan, let's try to look at the bigger picture here. Is Top Rank really at fault here? Or is it because Terence Crawford isn't, that they say, marketable?
Why wouldn't he be marketable? He's knocking people out. He's undisputed champion, 140 pounds. Yeah. He's one of the best fighters of our era. He's pound for pound number 2 and number 3. So I would say that that's not Crawford's fault. That's a business issue. Yeah. The Crawford versus Spence fight, that's been one of the biggest fights that never happened. Yeah. And, a lot of money was being left on the table. He wanted to go get it.
Yeah. Crawford obviously wants high-profile fights. He even called out Canelo Alvarez most recently. Now that he is a free agent, do you think it's best for him to take the advice of Bob Arum to take it on a per-fight basis, or do you want Crawford to explore what PBC and Eddie Hearn's Matchroom Boxing could offer him?
Well, I would say that if Bob Arum came with him with a contract for the fight that he wants, like Errol Spence, or even like a Keith Thurman, and it's a one-fight deal, go for it. But a lot of issues have been happening over the years. Like, Bob Arum had, publicly said that we lose money on Terence Crawford. Basically, like, burning that bridge and saying that Crawford is not a financially viable fighter. And that really, doesn't reflect well on Top Rank. You have one of the best fighters in the world. He knocks people out. He's been a champion in multiple weight classes, and you can't find a way to turn a profit with him. So, I think that Crawford right now, what's best for him, would be best for him, is to sort of do the Canelo Alvarez, style of going fight to fight, seeing what's the biggest opportunity for him, and letting the business, the free market, dictate what opportunities open up for him.
Everyone would say that PBC is the best landing spot for Crawford because of PBC's roster of welterweights. But if he decides to sign with Eddie Hearn, how do you see that partnership will go?
I think that would be kind of a rough, that wouldn't be a clean fit the way that PBC would be, because, PBC has those bigger names. So I'm struggling to figure out what would be like a good fight there for him. I think that, don't get me wrong, Eddie Hearn, he has shown that he can, put fights together across aisles if, the business is there, to be made. Like, he's someone who will work with people, but maybe like a Virgil Ortiz, that's, he's with Golden Boy, but he's fought on DAZN, for the most part in recent years. But that would be a fight that would be better for Ortiz than Crawford. I know Ortiz has called out Crawford. Mikey Garcia, if Mikey Garcia tries to get it back in the win column after his most recent loss, and he wants to take a big fight, that could be an attractive option. But I just don't see the big options there. When we're talking about him, it's like Errol Spence, Yordenis Ugas, maybe even a Danny Garcia. He still has some name value. Those would be the bigger fights to take for him.
Ryan, who do you want to see Terence Crawford fight next?
Errol Spence. That's it. It's Spence. I would, what he should do is call up Al Heyman or whoever answers Al Heyman's phone and say, listen, get me that fight tomorrow. That fight is, when you talk about like marinating fights, that fight is turned into, a casserole already. That fight needs to happen already before something occurs where, someone retires. People really wanted to see that fight. And then it becomes one of those situations where boxing fans are just not getting what they want. And then they just sort of tune out and they don't want to know what's going on with anything. So I think that fight has to happen for the sake of boxing, because, that would be a fight that would define the division in this era.
And that's the final bell for today's episode of Round by Round, presented by Eastern Communications. I'm Nisi Casiano.
And I'm Ryan Sangalia. We're on Facebook at 6 p.m. Monday through Friday and on the YouTube channel right after. So like, follow, share, and subscribe now. And also, don't forget to hit the notification bell to get notified about the latest news and the fearless views in the world of boxing.
Boyet Season, Bill Velasco, and Santino Hunasan are working the fights for you tomorrow. So catch them on the next Round by Round. All boxing, all Filipino, all the time. Ingat po kayo.